Hello, my name is Jesse Morgan and welcome to Little Big Planet. Little Big Planet 2 to be precise, right slap bang in the middle between 1 and the unfortunate 3. So what is it and why should we bring it into our classrooms? The philosopher in me feels the need to address the why over the what, so let's answer that first, so we can better understand the issue this tool addresses. Within our contemporary society, there have been dramatic changes concerning media, culture, and communication. Students function at twitch speed, seeking immediate gratification and constant feedback. Literacy has been altered to accommodate these needs, as within the 21st century and even the late 20th century, our visual vocabulary has expanded dramatically. What this means is that students of these eras tend to think and express with images rather than words, ultimately transforming traditional notions of literacy. As literacy itself has changed, such environments as the English classroom must change with them, transforming into zones of multiliteracy for what lies at the heart of the subject. The days of relying solely on traditional print and alphanumeric texts in classroom have passed. While traditional literacies are still vibrant and vital, they no longer command exclusive academic allegiance. Students need them, but students need more. Yet what do we do in the English classroom? We do more than just analyze and reflect in terms of literacy. We also create. A look at the revised Bloom's taxonomy demonstrates just how crucial creativity stands in terms of higher order thinking. The question is ultimately, how do we create in a 21st century context? Given the shifts in literacy to include legacy and future as well as print and digital literacies, the answer is simply multiliteracy. We need to create multiliteracy-based texts. This isn't as simple as multimodality, where you slap two mediums together and bam, there you have it. Rather, a multiliteracy-based text would include multimodality to encourage discourse and meta-analysis of the forms of texts employed. Simply put, where a multimodal text does not require analysis, it should be impossible to engage with multiliterate texts without engaging in some form of reflection. So how do we create these multiliteracy-based texts? Now we get to the what. Little Big Planet 2 is a puzzle platformer video game for the PlayStation 3 that centers around user-generated content. There are a number of levels based around the narrative of a sentient, space-traveling, purple color-schemed vacuum cleaner that seeks to devour entire worlds to absorb the power of their creativity. The narrative analysis opportunities for that speaks for itself. However, the basis of the game is user-generated content. Players can create their own levels using a variety of tools, materials, pre-made objects and gadgets, which they can then upload for the entire world to play. The game also supports multiplayer capabilities, both online and up to 4 players in the same room. The gameplay in the background is actually a level I created, but we'll return to that in greater detail later. Games in education is nothing new, and they have been employed in so many different ways with so many different outcomes. Yet, if we are to use Little Big Planet 2 to solve the issues of creating texts that address multiliteracy, we must understand what is in a game to begin with. The game seeks to be immersive, or at the very least interactive, through a variety of interfaces. These interfaces facilitate various interactions that the player undergoes, experiencing them in a way that simulates reality, or at least a version of it they can accept. This is the true power of games. The advantage of perceiving media through games is that forms of reading and writing are ultimately manifested within the player rather than outside of the player. The student lives the words rather than just reads them. Now, so far this may not seem any different than written assignments. However, that's the advantage, as the principles of video game design are so similar to those of a school curriculum. or in the English domain as good writing, though arguably games have greater transparency due to the levels of immersion they seek to achieve. An example of such transference is when a study conducted by the University of Alcalá de Henares used the video game of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire in order to train narrative skills. They focused upon motivation, the identification of favorite characters, and a reflection which sought to analyze the concepts tied to the narrative. Understanding that any video game ultimately have three key elements, that of mechanics, which is essentially gameplay and the rules of the game, story and narrative, the environment in which the mechanics are formed, and finally interactivity, the way in which the player or players fit within the world. Ultimately, that makes it easy to see how narrative can be studied. It's simply changing the way in which writing is viewed. Games can be viewed similar to the holonovel in Star Trek, where the reader is part of the story and experiences it all firsthand, rather than being a distant observer who has limited opportunity for engagement. So, the level that I created in Little Big Planet 2 is one that focuses on simile and metaphor. It's relatively short and easy to engage with, yet it allows for an interactive way to refresh student memory concerning these concepts rather than simply lecturing them or reminding them through some other means. However, it covers more than just those concepts, as it requires various forms of literacy to actually play the game. Literacy is crucial for all gamers, as games themselves can be understood as texts. The game requires multiliteracy in order to be effective, and any improvement to their performance is due to a refinement of those multiliteracy skills. Yet all forms of literacy amalgamate into an understanding of collaborative writing, the means in which ideas of the many are synthesized into one coherent product. After gaining an understanding of the game, students can synthesize their knowledge into creation. For example, say we're studying Frankenstein as a text in English. One assignment that could be conducted could be to create a character profile of a modern version of Frankenstein's monster, one that has been done in the past and continues to be done, for better or worse. Instead of simply filling out a form or taking a bunch of categories, they could instead create such a character in Little Big Planet 2, using the variety of options available to them. They could then have players control the character, experience their version of Frankenstein's monster for themselves, rather than reading an overview, allowing for students to not just analyze, but create, which is crucial for their development, as remaking the content helps the learner to master its rules and codes. So what would be the predicted benefits of using Little Big Planet 2 in the classroom? Games are linked with improvements to visual attention skills and a better working memory. There are potential correlations with fluid intelligence, but further studies are required. Little Big Planet 2 itself allows for an accessible platform in which content can both be examined and created as part of one learning process. Furthermore, the game itself, as well as the community around it, is rich in culture, drawing reference from a diverse list of texts in order to create their own content. Now for the challenges. Within academia there lies the work-play barrier. This is the expectation that what students do for play is dramatically different than what they do to learn. Such a distinction is of course redundant in the modern context of contemporary holistic learners. Learners who are expected to play 10,000 hours before they reach the age of 21, in a world where we spend 3 billion hours a week playing games. Learners who outside of school are fully engaged by their 21st century digital lives. Yet we can see the role between education and games in our past as well. Consider the innocent game of snakes and ladders. When it was created back in India in 2 BC, it represented a moral message. The ladders represented virtues, which could lead players up to a greater spiritual state, while snakes represented sins, which of course had the opposite effect. So in a world where as the popularity of gaming increases, the focus on other mediums of entertainment decrease. it is ignorant to continue teaching texts without adapting to the changing environments of contemporary society. It is not enough to simply be literate. Students and teachers must be multiliterate. Other forms of text don't need to be abandoned. The use of media such as digital games complements the use of other written or audiovisual methods and permits the development of multiple literacies in the classroom. Yet instead of using print text for the basis of student creativity, limiting it to the written word, students could use Little Big Planet 2 to create interactive environments and activities that seek to educate rather than simply fulfill the criteria set by their teacher. Now, although my examples have been for the English domain, that shouldn't discourage other domains using Little Big Planet 2. In fact, there's a history level kit as well as others which could allow students to examine and replicate the architecture and art of specific time periods in societies. There's also the ability to create your own music within the game, as well as put recorded audio into it. For example, I recorded my voice to read out the instructions within the level I created. So imagine an open classroom, full of students engaged with their work, developing their inquiry skills in a variety of ways in order to create and share with others from around the world. Little Big Planet 2 isn't just a commercial game. It's not just an educational tool either. It's a big world of possibility made little and manageable for us to use for expression to the heights of our creativity.